My mother-in-law complained to my husband that I refused to be her and his sister's personal driver. Jessica slammed the grocery receipt onto the kitchen counter, her hands still trembling from rage. $27 for gas this week alone, all because Patricia had decided she needed fresh tomatoes from the farmer's market on the other side of Phoenix. Not the perfectly good ones from the supermarket 5 minutes away, mind you, the special ones that only grew in some woman's backyard garden 40 minutes across town. Brandon walked through the front door, his work boots echoing against the hardwood floor. Jessica didn't look up from the pile of receipts she'd been collecting for weeks. Gas station visits, oil changes that came early because of all the extra driving, wear and tear on her Honda that she couldn't afford to replace. "Mom called," he said, loosening his tie. "She says you were rude to her today." Jessica's jaw clenched, rude, because she'd politely suggested that Patricia could take the bus to her weekly hair appointment instead of calling Jessica like some kind of taxi service. Because she'd mentioned that Stephanie was perfectly capable of driving herself to the mall instead of expecting Jessica to chauffeur her around like a teenager. The pattern had been building for months. First, it was just occasional favors, a ride to the doctor when Patricia's car was in the shop. Then it became weekly errands. Now it was 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Jessica had become the unofficial family driver, and nobody seemed to notice that she had her own life to live. The next morning, Jessica's phone buzzed at 7:30 a.m. Patricia's name flashed on the screen, and Jessica felt her stomach drop. She let it ring through to voicemail, then immediately felt guilty for the small act of rebellion. The message was predictably sweet and manipulative. "Hi honey, it's Mom. I hope I'm not bothering you, but I have a doctor's appointment at 10 and Stephanie's car won't start. Could you possibly give us both a ride? I know you're so busy, but we'd really appreciate it. Love you." Jessica stared at her phone, her coffee growing cold in her hands. Stephanie's car had been having mysterious problems for weeks now, always on days when she needed rides places. Yesterday it was the transmission. Last week it was the battery. Today it wouldn't start at all. Amazing how these mechanical failures always coincided with shopping trips and social appointments. She called her boss and took a personal day, something she'd been doing more and more frequently. Her supervisor had already made comments about her reliability, and Jessica could feel her professional reputation slipping away one family favor at a time. By 9:15, she was sitting in Patricia's driveway, watching her mother-in-law and sister-in-law emerge from the house loaded down with purses, shopping bags, and a cooler that suggested this wasn't just a quick doctor's visit. "Oh, wonderful you came," Patricia beamed, settling into the passenger seat. "After we go to Dr. Martinez, Stephanie needs to stop by the bank, and then we thought we'd grab lunch at that new place downtown. You don't mind, do you, dear?" The confrontation came the next Sunday at family dinner. Jessica had prepared for it, rehearsed her words, steeled herself for the storm she knew was coming. She waited until dessert was served, until everyone was comfortable and relaxed, before she dropped her bombshell. "I won't be available for rides anymore," she announced, her voice calm and clear. "I've found some great alternatives for getting around Phoenix, and I think it's time everyone became more independent." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's fork clattered against her plate, and Stephanie's mouth fell open in shock. Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his chair, caught between his wife and his family. Patricia recovered first, her voice dripping with hurt and disbelief. "I don't understand, Jessica. We're family. Families help each other." "You're right," Jessica said, surprising everyone. "Families do help each other. But help goes both ways. It's not one person constantly sacrificing while everyone else takes." She pulled out her phone and showed them the ride-sharing apps she'd downloaded, the bus schedules she'd printed, the senior transportation services she'd researched. "There are so many options available. Patricia, you qualify for 3 different senior ride programs. Stephanie, you live 10 minutes from a major bus line." Stephanie's face flushed red. "I can't take the bus. Do you know what kind of people ride the bus?" The mask slipped, and Jessica saw clearly for the first time what she'd been dealing with. This wasn't about need or age or family obligation. This was about status, about having someone at their beck and call, about treating Jessica like hired help while calling it love. 3 weeks later, Jessica sat in her office, finally caught up on the quarterly reports that had been haunting her desk. Her supervisor had complimented her renewed focus, and Jessica had scheduled lunch with friends she hadn't seen in months. Her calendar was her own again, marked with appointments and plans that actually mattered to her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "The bus driver was so nice today. He helped me with my groceries and told me about a senior discount at the market. Thank you for the information about the transportation service." Jessica stared at the message, surprised by the lack of guilt she felt. She'd expected to feel bad about her ultimatum, had braced herself for family drama and cold shoulders. Instead, she felt lighter than she had in years. Brandon appeared in her office doorway with coffee and a sheepish smile. "Mom wants to know if you'd like to come to dinner Sunday. She's making that roast you like." "As a guest," Jessica said, "not as a chauffeur." "As family," Brandon replied, and this time the word sounded different. It sounded like respect. Jessica had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable people's helplessness. Sometimes family means teaching independence rather than fostering dependence. And sometimes the person who needs to be driven somewhere most is yourself, driven to stand up, speak out, and reclaim your own life. She smiled and reached for her car keys. This time, she was driving herself.